Hello everyone, my name is Angela, and today we're going to be talking about all the books I read in June, my June wrap-up, if you will. I read 6 books in June, which is a little bit on the lower side for me, but still good. I did read some chunkier books. This will be a chronological. Sometimes I do my wrap-ups chronologically, and sometimes I rank them from worst to best. But today we're just doing chronological, give you the story of my June. So first up, I finished The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I always have to show off how beautiful this book is. Overall, she is heavy though, so I might not hold her up the whole time. But I do have a standalone review for this on my channel, so I will link that down below if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts, but without spoilers still. Of course. This is a new gothic romantasy release by Rachel Gillig, who is known for her series called One Dark Window, and I think the second one is like One Dark Crown or something like that. I haven't read those. I picked this up because I really love knights. I love a medieval setting. I love castles. I love just all of the things that I heard in the synopsis for this. I loved. This takes place in the beginning at a like gothic cathedral. So we have our main character Sybil, and this does take place in a fantasy world, so it's not like called England or anything, but you can kind of imagine that it is based off of a kingdom in medieval Europe. Sybil works at this cathedral as a diviner, which makes her kind of a religious figure. She basically divines futures for people who come to the cathedral and pay to have their futures read. And so she performs this ritual that kind of is inherently violent. She like has to drown and then dream in order to perform this ritual. And then we meet Sybil, and things change very quickly when the new king of this kingdom arrives, and he brings with him some of his knights, and then mysterious and possibly deadly things start happening around the cathedral, and her whole routine shifts, let's just say. She does leave the cathedral at one point. I loved this. I didn't think it was perfect, so I did give this a 4.5, but I will say that like my overall experience with this book was extremely positive. A lot of books that set themselves up as atmospheric can disappoint me because they're quite boring and they don't really bring the atmosphere that you were promised anyway, but this one I think really did bring the atmosphere. I don't think that it is as complex and exciting a plot as many a high fantasy book that you will find, but for me, the writing, characters, and atmosphere were all so excellent that I didn't mind that the plot was a bit simplistic. So highly recommend this one if any of that sounds good to you. Next up, I read The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I actually buddy read this with 2 of my friends, Sarah and Emma, and I actually read most of this in May. I think we read this for like 5 weeks. We had it like scheduled out. And I initially was reading the physical copy from my library, and then I was finding it hard to really get engaged with it, so I actually used a Libro FM credit to get the audiobook. I don't know which experience was better for me, but ultimately I didn't end up liking this book. I gave it 2 stars. This book follows 2 bisexual best friends who had a past, and they are accidentally taking the same European vacation because they were supposed to take this vacation together like 3 years ago, and they both kind of, you know, called the company and got like a ticket for like another showing or another vacation, and they accidentally end up on the same tour, like this like food and wine tour. And so they are dealing with all of the complications of their romantic past, and also the fact that they have such a deep like friendship past as well, and they haven't spoken to each other since they broke up. So it's kind of a second chance romance, you know, unfolding in Europe. Casey McQuiston is a very intelligent person. I think that their intellect and their imagination and like understanding of like food and wine was evident in this book. However, I did find the food and wine stuff quite pretentious and grating. I think that I would have liked this a lot more had there been a lot less about food and wine, if it had just been a European vacation without that like heavy emphasis. So our two main characters are Theo and Kit, and the first half of the book is in Theo's perspective, and then the second half of the book is in Kit's perspective. Theo is non-binary, but they don't come out as non-binary until later in the book. I wouldn't say that that's like a spoiler or a twist, but like it's not clear at the beginning. And then Kit is a like cishet man, and I just found Theo's chapters to be a little bit frustrating because although I appreciated the conversations about gender, I found Theo not a very likable main character, which is, kind of a basic bitch reason to not like a book. But my other friends agreed as well that they didn't like Theo, so I think having it be Theo chapter, Kit chapter, Theo chapter would have been a lot more palatable. And also Theo has a very like negative view of themselves sometimes, and so kind of seeing them through Kit's perspective would have been kind of refreshing, just to know how people see them differently than they see themselves. Ultimately, this one really suffered from a lack of flashback chapters as well. Like, we're getting this second chance romance between two people whose connection has already been established in another book that we didn't get to read, in another time, and I would have much preferred this being flashback chapters. So ultimately this one did not work for me. Didn't love the food and wine stuff, didn't love the pretentiousness, didn't love Theo, didn't love the lack of seeing two people fall in love, really. So 2 stars, but I definitely will read more from Casey McQuiston because I did find them to be a very intelligent writer, even if I didn't like this romance book. Next, I read Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sugimura, and I listened to this one on audio, mostly while commuting to my new job, which is about 35 minutes, so I had like a decent amount of time to listen to this, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, and it was translated by Philip Gabriel. I forgot to say that. This is a magical realism story, and our main character's name is Kokoro. She is a middle school aged child living in Japan, and because of some bullying that she experienced at school, she has not gone to school in a number of weeks or months, a pretty long time, and her parents are trying to get her into this like alternative school. They're trying to work with her, get her to go back to school in some shape or form. They don't actually know about the bullying, so Kokoro is going through a lot, and one day the mirror in her room starts shining and she steps through it and she arrives at this castle that very much feels like a fairy tale castle from a like European fairy tale that she has kind of heard of before, Hans Christian Andersen or some classic like that. And Kokoro finds that there are other students her age who are also there, and this girl in a wolf mask comes to them and tells them what's going on, tells them about this competition to find this hidden object, and whoever finds it gets their wish granted, but they only have a certain number of months to complete this puzzle in order to find the winner. So this is the story of Kokoro and her new friends, acquaintances, getting to know each other in this castle, escaping to this castle. We learn about all of their backstories and what they're going through at home. And it is just very comforting and cozy and like a little bit sad and melancholy, but I just had such a great time listening to this. I was like looking forward to getting in the car every day and listening to this. It was really a really good time for me, honestly. I can see how this might read as more of a YA or middle grade book to some people because all of the characters that we're following are in middle school and like early high school, but it's not really a YA book. I don't know. So if you don't like reading from the perspective of children, this one might not be for you. But there was just something about this that was so like calming and peaceful, and I just had a lovely time. I've never really read anything like it before, and I definitely want to read more Japanese translated fiction because the few books that I have read translated from Japanese, I have given really high ratings. So this book also gave me like a new craving to learn more about Japan and, you know, different aspects of the culture and history. And honestly, the two books that I've read about Japan recently have both been about girls getting bullied, which apparently bullying is like a really big problem in Japan. So anyway, not so fun fact. But yeah, that's Only Castle in the Mirror. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend if any of that sounds good. If you need like a change of pace in your reading and you want to listen to something that's not going to be too convoluted, highly recommend. I did go on vacation in June, and it was funny. I worked for like 2 weeks and I was like, vacation. It's like, whew, thank God I'm getting a break from my 2 weeks of working. But my vacation read that I started and finished on the vacation was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is one of those really popular romances that I have been meaning to try for years, and I finally did. I ended up giving this book 3.75 stars, which for me is just like not quite a 4-star quality book, but I still had a pretty good time with it. Don't have a lot of complaints, just didn't give me those 4 or 5-star feelings. Our main characters are Rhett and Summer is the daughter of a lawyer who kind of has his like own PR firm, and one of his clients is Rhett, who is a famous bull rider, and he recently got caught saying something less than ideal on camera. Not that it was problematic or anything, but just because of one of these sponsors, like the corporate sponsors that he had. This video of him saying something going viral kind of goes against the values of the sponsor. So Rhett is in big trouble. Summer is also a lawyer like her father, and she is working to earn a place at this law firm. Obviously she is a nepo baby in the sense that like her dad owns the business, but she is qualified, and this is kind of her first big assignment, is to take care of this scenario with Rhett. So she is kind of becoming his professional babysitter for the next few months, and she ends up going to his family ranch where he lives. And so there is that like small town ranch, Western United States. No, actually this is Canada. I'm so sorry to Canada. I'm so sorry. This is Canadian. But it gives those vibes of like, you know, out on the plains. Actually, no, there are mountains. It's giving me like Montana vibes. I've not been to that many places in Canada. I'm so sorry. It is Canadian. Again, I'm so sorry to Canada. You are so often overlooked, and I'm so sorry. But yeah, very cool, like ranch vibes, small town, mountains in the background, very idyllic. I really like this. I was worried that Elsie Silver and these cowboy romance books were going to be too dirty and sexual, and they were going to be like crossing the line of cringe. But I didn't think that with this. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I thought it was hot but not too hot, and there was a decent amount of plot. And yeah, as I'm flipping through this, I'm like, I want to read the next book. I don't own the next book, so that's unfortunate. Let me know down below if you've read this, if the audiobooks are good, because maybe I'll get the audiobooks. But yeah, that's Flawless Cowboy Romance, first one I've read. I enjoyed it, so hopefully Elsa Silver or another cowboy romance girly has a 5-star in store for me. Next up, I read Poison Study by Marissa V. Snyder. Nope, Maria V. Snyder. And I read this as an audiobook, yeah, from my library, from Hoopla. Love Hoopla, highly recommend. This is a YA fantasy, and it is described, well, it has been described to me via a YouTuber that I watch as like kind of a slow burn fantasy romance in the YA space, so that really drew me to it. This is about a young woman whose name I do not recall. Okay, her name is Yelena, and she has killed one of the High General's sons. And so she is like in the dungeon about to be executed when she gets brought to this guy who's like high up in this military system, which is ruling the place where she lives in this fantasy world. And the guy's like, hey, so you have two options. You can either get executed, or you could be the new poison taster for the commander. I don't know if the commander is the highest person or the general, but basically like the top guy in this military hierarchy. And she obviously chooses the poison taster because otherwise we wouldn't have a book and she'd be dead. And the reason that she can't just like run away is because every day she gets poisoned by this man. His name is Valak. He's the man who is high up in the military hierarchy, and he's the one who offers her this job, and he is in charge of training her. Yeah, and so he poisons her every day, and then the next morning she comes to him and gets the antidote. So if she were to run away, she would die. So that's what kind of keeps her loyal. And yeah, magic has been declared illegal. There was like a coup, and there used to be like a kingdom of like a king and all these magicians, and now it's like a military hierarchy. So they are kind of still dealing with all the changes that are happening, and we see Yelena involved in some dangerous plots, and we see her make new friends and alliances and figure out who she can and cannot trust. And we also learn about her past. She was an orphan, and she was treated very cruelly, and some experimentation was done on her. So that is, I don't know, it's like, it's not the most complicated fantasy book. It is a YA fantasy book, but as I say it out loud, there's like more to it than I remembered. I ended up giving this one 3.25 stars. This is a book that I went into knowing it wasn't going to be a like absolute favorite book. I just wanted something easier to listen to that would still be good, but not so complex that I couldn't drive while listening to it. And I haven't decided if I'm really going to take the time to read the next book or not. I think if I want to read the next book, I need to do so in the next like couple months, or else I'm gonna forget like all of the details. But I did enjoy this. I don't have like particularly strong feelings, but I think especially for like a book to listen to during my commutes, it was a good pick, and I might continue with the series. Okay, last but not least, we have The House of Always by Jen Lyons. This is the 4th book in this 5-book series called The Chorus. I always forget if it's A Chorus of Dragons or The Chorus of Dragons. I think it's A Chorus of Dragons. The first book is called The Ruin of Kings, which you may have heard of. Yeah, this is the 4th book. It is a little bit under 500 pages, so shorter than the rest of them, although they are pretty tall. So I think like compared to this book, I think if they were the same size, this one would be like many more pages than 500. Anyway, you do not care. This is a fantasy series in which a lot is happening. It's very hard to describe this series in terms of the vibes, just because there's so much going on. But basically we have this empire, and we mainly have humans, but we also have gods and demons, and we have this race called the Vane, which are kind of like elven inspired creatures, and we do have some monsters and such. And it's not exactly like Middle Eastern fantasy vibes, but when I'm picturing the capital city, I'm kind of picturing like a Middle Eastern inspired city from ye olden days with like beautiful architecture. And then there are also different climates like jungles and ice climates in here. There's also magic that has to do with reincarnation. There's a lot going on, but our basic plot is with our main character Kieran, who grew up in a brothel working as a musician with his father Sergia. And shit hits the fan in the first book with Kieran ending up in slavery and getting involved in this crazy plot, and he is discovered to be a long lost prince in this world, which dramatically changes his life. So this is the fourth book. I can't really tell you anything about it. I wasn't like disappointed with this book. Obviously 4.25 stars is a really good rating, but I'm just waiting for a book in this series to be 5 stars, and I don't know if it's gonna happen. I don't know if any of these books are quite 5 stars. I think when you have a book that is this long, when it is a 23-hour audiobook, when it is 500, 600 pages, you kind of regard the book with more scrutiny than if it were 350 pages, just because it is taking up so much more of your time. And it's like, if you're going to take up this much of my time, in order for it to be 5 stars, you really have to do things very well. I will say one thing that I think prevents this series from being a 5-star series is that the events are not necessarily told chronologically. For example, in this book, we have events that we're learning about that happen right after the first book, and this is the 4th book. So it's like, you read the first book, you read the second book, you read the third book, and then in the 4th book, you're reading about something that you haven't read in a while, and so those details are kind of fuzzy. And that happens in several different scenarios, where it's like, it's been so long since you have read about certain characters, certain scenes, certain plot points, that once you get to kind of the next part of that plot, you're like, wait, what even happened? You know, it just doesn't hit as hard because it hasn't been on your mind, because so much other shit has happened. So I think that's what really prevents this from being a, you know, new all-time favorite series, something like the David Bond trilogy for me. But I still highly recommend this series. I mean, obviously, I'm reading these very long books. I'm reading the 5th one right now, so obviously I do really enjoy them, but they're just not perfect. Those are all of the beautiful books that I read in June. Although they were not all complete winners, I'm still glad that I read them all for different reasons, which is, at the end of the day, all that matters. Let me know your thoughts on any of these down below, or let me know what you read and liked or disliked in June. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more bookish content from me, and I hope you have a lovely week. Bye!